The sea churned unnaturally near the edge of the Pacific Research Expanse, 30 miles off the Oregon coast. The morning had started like any other for Jackson Reid, 36, ex-Navy diver turned marine technician, until the sonar pinged 6 times in under 10 seconds. That didn't happen unless something was either very close or very large. Jackson leaned over the glowing screen, frowning. "Too big for a whale," he muttered, brushing a calloused hand through his short, sandy hair. The research vessel, the Marlin's Wake, bobbed slightly, its hull creaking in protest. Jackson grabbed the radio. "Sam, you seeing this?" he said. "Yeah," came the voice of his colleague from the upper deck, "but I'm telling you that's not a natural formation. Nothing moves like that." Jackson adjusted the sonar array and tapped his screen. The shape was massive. It moved in a smooth arc, circling the anchored vessel. He stepped outside, sea wind hitting him in the face, and stared into the water. Nothing. 300 meters below them, it stirred again. But the real story didn't begin with Jackson. It began 30 light-years away, in a sterile observation chamber aboard the orbital station of Professor Keller of the Varnac Coalition. Keller's translucent skin shimmered under the lab lights. He adjusted his ocular lens and dictated to his recorder. Subject 44B, designated test of emotional adaptability, will commence. The creature has been fully synthesized with behavioral algorithms modeled on deep-sea predators from Earth's Cenozoic era. The objective: determine whether a human will respond with aggression, fear, or something else. Keller tapped a panel. A hologram of Earth's Pacific Ocean spun in front of him. Deploying unit to Earth coordinates now. The creature, a hybrid of engineered tissue and ancient DNA, was sent in a containment pod the size of a city bus. It dropped into the ocean 2 days before Jackson detected the sonar anomaly. And while the world above went on sipping coffee and checking stock prices, something ancient-looking and biomechanical blinked open a set of eyes designed to terrify. Back aboard the Marlin's Wake, Jackson threw on his diving gear and double-checked the oxygen tanks. "You're not going down there alone, are you?" Sam asked, gripping the railing. "I'm not waiting around while something that big circles us. I'll go down to the first platform, secure the camera feed, and come right back up. Just keep the comms open." He dropped into the water, descending slowly past the barnacled supports of the vessel. The light thinned. At 30 meters, he turned on his shoulder light, illuminating a trail of disturbed silt. Something had been here. He hovered silently for a moment, then spotted a shimmer in the distance. He swam toward it, heart pounding against the pressure of the suit. The shimmer was a piece of metal torn from the sensor array. Not chewed. Ripped. He reached out to grab it when a low vibration thrummed through the water. Jackson froze. A dark shape passed beneath him, longer than a subway train. He couldn't make out details, just movement and mass. It didn't attack, just circled. Watching back on the ship, Sam's voice crackled in his ear. "Jax, you seeing that? It's Jesus, it's huge." "Yeah," Jackson whispered. "I know." That night, Jackson sat alone in the galley staring at the scan data. The thing was real, and it hadn't attacked. He tapped his pen against the table, thinking, fish. If it was part biological, it had to eat, and if it was watching him, maybe it was curious. The next morning, he brought 3 pounds of frozen mackerel from the ship's stores. He packed it into a waterproof container and clipped it to his belt before diving again. He descended to the same depth, heart thumping in his chest. The ocean swallowed him whole, and his light cut a narrow path through the gloom. He unlatched the container and released the fish, letting them drift. He waited, nothing. Then movement. The creature emerged from the darkness slowly, cautiously. Its body was covered in dark, ridged plating, and it moved with a grace that seemed almost choreographed. Its eyes, 4 of them, glowed a dim green. Jackson held still. The creature approached the mackerel, nudged one with its snout, then devoured it in a smooth gulp. It paused. Then looked at Jackson. He didn't flinch. The creature circled him once, then vanished into the dark. Back aboard the ship, Jackson pulled off his helmet and exhaled hard. "It ate the fish," he said. Sam blinked. "What? I fed it fish. It looked at me, then left. You fed it." "Like a pet?" "No, like, I don't know, a gesture." Sam stared at him. "You're seriously telling me you just made friends with a sea monster?" "I'm saying it didn't try to kill me. That's a start." Over the next week, Jackson repeated the process, always mackerel, always the same depth. Each time the creature appeared, ate and left. But soon it started arriving before the fish were released. Then it began to linger. Jackson started talking to it, not expecting it to understand, just filling the silence. Bet you're wondering why I'm doing this. Truth is, I don't know either. He laughed once, bubbles rising. Maybe I just wanted to see if something that big could be gentle. Meanwhile, in Keller's lab, the logs were shocking. The creature's aggression protocols had deactivated after the second encounter. Its stress levels dropped when Jackson was present. Impossible, Keller muttered. He's not pacifying it, he's bonding. He adjusted settings. Increased the creature's metabolic drive, made it hungrier. Still, it didn't attack on the 8th dive. Jackson brought a whole tuna. The creature approached and instead of eating immediately, nudged the fish back toward him. Jackson blinked. You want me to eat it? He laughed. Nah, buddy, that one's all you. The creature hovered a moment, then devoured the tuna in one gulp. That afternoon, Jackson sat in the control room staring at the footage. Sam, this thing's not just smart, it's trying to communicate. Sam folded his arms. You're suggesting it's intelligent. I'm suggesting it knows I'm not food, and that matters. 2 nights later, a storm hit. Winds howled and waves slammed the vessel. Jackson barely slept. At dawn, he suited up. You're insane, Sam said. Visibility's garbage. You go down there, you may not come back. Jackson checked his gear. If it's still out there, I have to know it's okay, he dove. The water was rough, visibility poor. He reached the depth and hovered, shining his light into the murk. Seconds passed. Then minutes, then there it was. But something was wrong. Its movements were jerky, uneven. One of its fins was torn, blood trailing behind it. No, Jackson whispered. He swam closer, slowly, hand out. A metal shard protruded from its side, torn from one of the sea-floor turbines nearby. Jackson didn't hesitate. He reached out and grabbed the shard, bracing his legs against the creature's flank. It flinched but didn't attack. He pulled. The shard came free with a surge of dark blood. The creature shuddered, then stilled. Jackson signaled for an emergency lift and surfaced fast, chest burning from exertion. Sam helped him on board. It was hurt, Jackson gasped. I pulled a turbine blade out of its side. You did what? I couldn't leave it like that. Keller watched the footage, stunned. The creature had allowed a human to inflict pain on it willingly. He rewound the footage again, trying to understand. Terminate the test, he told his assistant. But the subject, I said, terminate it. Retrieve the specimen. Jackson returned the next day with another fish. The creature didn't come, not the next day either or the next. He dove deeper, wider, searching. Nothing. Then, on the 5th day, he found it. It was trapped. A net, clearly synthetic, had been deployed near trench edge, lined with electric nodes. The creature was caught. Jackson swam toward it, heart pounding. He pulled at the cables, fingers numb, chest aching from the depth. The creature writhed, shocking pulses running across its skin. One of the cables lashed out, catching Jackson across the ribs. Pain exploded through his side. He gritted his teeth and kept pulling. The net loosened. The creature surged forward, breaking free. Jackson signaled for emergency ascent, his vision dimming. He blacked out just before reaching the surface. He woke up in the ship's infirmary, ribs bandaged, face pale. You've got 3 broken ribs, Sam said. And you're lucky. You blacked out 10 meters from the surface. We had to pull you in. Is it safe? Jackson rasped. The thing, yeah. It's gone. No, he said. Not gone. Free. Keller watched the last feed silent. It chose him, he said. Not the food, not the environment, him. He ended the test permanently back on Earth. Jackson recovered slowly. 6 weeks in a brace, pain meds, physical therapy. He didn't dive during that time, but he looked out at the water every day. One morning, he walked to the edge of the dock, still sore. He tossed a single fish into the water. Nothing happened. He turned to leave. A ripple broke the surface. He turned back. A single green eye blinked just above the waves. Jackson smiled. Hey, buddy. The creature dipped beneath the waves again, but Jackson knew it would be back. 3 weeks into recovery, Jackson's ribs still pulled sharply when he twisted too far, and his left lung hadn't fully reinflated. He'd been advised against any diving or lifting heavier than a kettle, which he ignored selectively, depending on how bored he felt. The medical tent on the Marlin's wake had been swapped for a temporary onshore facility, just a prefabricated unit near the docks with a cot, a portable ultrasound, and a physician assistant who mostly left him alone unless he was actively coughing up blood. It was late afternoon when the knock came. "Doors open," Jackson said, not looking up from the old nautical chart he'd been obsessively marking with currents and temperature deltas. A man stepped in wearing a blue windbreaker with a silver badge stitched on the breast. He didn't introduce himself. He just closed the door, pulled the folding chair from under the coat hooks, and sat. "You're Jackson, Reid." Jackson gave a weary nod. "I'm with the Oceanic Anomalies Bureau." "You've been observed interacting with something that's not in any marine biology textbook. If you got a better name for it, I'm all ears." The man didn't smile. "We picked up traces of synthetic lattice residue near the trench, high-energy net structure, not ours, and not from any nation-state." "You didn't plant it. You think I lured it in and then booby-trapped it. With what budget? We're not saying you did, but you did pull a foreign object out of it. You kept the shard." Jackson reached behind the cot and hauled out a sealed plastic case. Inside was the jagged fragment he'd stashed after the injury. He hadn't told Sam. Hadn't told anyone, but he kept it. Something about the material stuck with him, not the look of it, but the way it felt in his hand. Not cold, not quite warm either, like it was waiting. The agent examined it without touching. "We're taking this for analysis. You can take it, but I want the results, all of them." The man stood. "We'll be in touch." Jackson watched him leave, then lay back down. The chart fluttered in the breeze from the cracked window. That night he didn't sleep, not because of pain, because there hadn't been a ripple at the dock since the storm. He kept telling himself it would show again. It always had. But the water stayed still. 2 days later, a different ship appeared offshore, sleek and low, no markings, no flags. Jackson saw it from the end of the pier while sipping cold, instant coffee. He squinted. "That's not a fishing vessel." Sam walked up behind him. "They anchored without hailing. Think they're spooks?" Jackson didn't answer. He was watching a drone deploy from the ship's deck, small, fast, and bright red. It zipped across the bay like it had somewhere to be. By late evening, the drone returned, and the ship vanished into fog. The next morning, Jackson went back to the water, not to dive, just to sit. "You don't have to do tricks," he said to the waves. "Just let me know you're not dead." Nothing answered, but the tide shifted strangely just once. That was enough. Back in orbit, Professor Keller was having what Varnakians would consider a professional crisis. Not because the experiment failure was routine, but because it hadn't failed according to predictions. His colleagues were still reviewing the data logs. The creature had developed a behavioral pattern that wasn't just unexpected, it was unclassified. "It exhibits preference," Keller said aloud. His assistant, a younger being with only 4 limbs and a reduced cranial flare, tilted its head. "Preference is a trait reserved for sentience." "I'm aware," Keller snapped. "This wasn't supposed to be a sentient. Perhaps the exposure to the human. Induced adaptation. That's not how sentience works. It's not contagious." The assistant blinked all 8 eyes, unimpressed. "You did splice cognitive templates from multiple apex predators. It's possible the overlap created an emergent pattern." "No, it's more than that. The human did something, triggered it. And you wish to replicate this." Keller turned toward the observation window. Earth hung below, blue and infuriating. "I want to speak to the human." Back on land, Jackson was hunched over a workstation, staring at a thermal signature map. He hadn't shaved in a week, and the painkillers were making him dream in strange colors. His side ached with every breath. Still, he scanned every square meter of the seafloor data the Marlin's wake had logged. Sam entered with a bag of gelatinous fruit chews. "You're gonna burn out your retinas." "I'm looking for heat trails," Jackson murmured. "You're not going to find a trail from a creature that lives in salt water and has no fixed body temperature." "I'm not looking for body heat. I'm looking for turbine discharge. If it got caught once, it might have gone back to the same trench for shelter." Sam tossed the bag onto the desk and sat. "You ever think maybe it left because it wanted to?" Jackson didn't answer. "Hey, I'm not saying it didn't like you. I'm saying maybe it liked you enough to go before someone else came for it." That landed harder than intended. Jackson stood and started strapping on his brace. "You're not going diving," Sam said. "I'm going to the bluff." Better view of the trench from there. He climbed the ridge slowly, every step a twinge. At the top, he set up the long-range scope and adjusted it toward the shelf where he'd first seen the creature breach. There was movement, not from the sea, from the air. A craft, not human in design, shimmered into partial visibility just above the water. It wavered between cloaked and visible, like a mirage trying to decide whether to exist. Then a voice spoke, not from a speaker, not from his radio, but directly into his perception. "You are Jackson Reid." He rubbed his eyes. "Okay, great, the hallucinations have evolved. You are not hallucinating, we are initiating contact." He steadied himself. "Who's we?" "We are the Varnak Coalition." "You interacted with one of our experimental bioforms." Jackson laughed once under his breath. "You mean the sea creature you dropped into our ocean and then tried to kill?" There was a pause. "Then, the protocol was altered. It was not meant to be recovered. You trapped it. It bled." "That was not the intent." Jackson leaned against a boulder, breathing carefully. "Then what was?" "To observe your response. Emotional adaptability under non-controlled conditions." He stared out at the water. "You used it to test me." "Yes. And what did you learn?" "That humans cannot be reduced to threat or prey response. You exhibit complication." "Thanks," Jackson said flatly. "We try." There was another pause. Then, "The unit you bonded with is designated Subject 44B. It has shown behavioral divergence. It seeks your presence." Jackson blinked. "It's alive." "Yes. Where is it?" "It is approaching." He turned toward the sea. The waves parted slightly. A familiar dark ridge broke the surface, followed by a slow, deliberate eye rising just enough to be seen. "Why tell me all this?" Jackson asked. "You altered the experiment." "That is not permitted, but the result is valuable." Jackson folded his arms. "So what now? You keep testing us. Drop more monsters in the ocean and see if we hug them or run screaming." "No, this was singular. You exceeded expectations. We wish to negotiate." He squinted. "You want a treaty?" "No, we want to understand." Jackson looked down at the creature. It blinked once, waited. "Then stop dropping things you don't understand into oceans you've never swum in." Silence again. "Then we will return with questions." He exhaled. "Bring snacks next time." The presence receded, the ship shimmered and vanished. Jackson sat for a long while after that, watching the creature drift just off the coast. Not waiting, just being. By nightfall, it was still there. He didn't go back down to the dock, not yet. Instead, he stayed on the bluff, ribs aching, breath short, thinking about the fact that somewhere across the stars, an entire species had just learned that humans weren't always violent, weren't always scared, and sometimes, just sometimes, they threw fish to strangers in the dark. The fog had burned off early that morning, leaving the coast drenched in sunlight and the smell of drying kelp. Jackson sat under the faded canvas awning behind the equipment shed, one leg stretched out on a folding chair, the other bent awkwardly to relieve pressure on his ribs. His brace itched under his shirt, but the tape over his side itched worse. He'd torn it off earlier, found the skin beneath raw and pink with healing blisters. He was halfway through a tin of cold beans when someone cleared their throat. The figure wasn't local. Tall, with too many joints for comfort, and skin that resembled polished slate. It wore a cloak that shimmered like oil slicks under the sun, but no one else on the dock even glanced in its direction. Jackson blinked once, then pointed his spoon. "You're either real, or the meds are getting imaginative." "I am real," the creature said, voice modulated but not electronic. "And your medication dosage is within accepted parameters, though perhaps inadvisably self-adjusted. You spying on my vitals now, you were observed, not monitored." "There is a difference." Jackson set the tin down. "You're not the same ones as last time. No, I am not of Keller's research division. I was sent by the Mediation Council to address the result of his unauthorized field trial." "Field trial," he rubbed his temples. "You mean the thing where you dropped a lab-grown leviathan into the ocean and waited to see if I'd scream or not?" The alien stepped closer. Its feet made no sound on the wooden planks. "According to our internal review, the test breached at least 7 interspecies contact protocols." The council has concluded that the specimen was not a valid test subject. It was too complex. Too complex, Jackson leaned forward. You built it. Yes, but adaptive intelligence is not easily contained, especially when it begins rewriting its own behavior scaffolds. He frowned. You're saying it reprogrammed itself, gradually, and perhaps not consciously, but the result is the same. It no longer behaves as designed. Jackson exhaled slowly. Neither do I some days. The alien tilted its head. We are aware. That is why I was sent. The Mediation Council does not wish to escalate. We intend to resolve the incident. By what? Taking it back. By releasing it. Jackson blinked. Wait, you're letting it stay? We have no jurisdiction over Earth's oceans. The creature is now self-determining. It would not survive relocation. Nor would it cooperate. You tried to trap it once already. That was Keller's team. He has been reassigned. Jackson picked up the tin again, poked at the remains. So what do you want from me? The alien's arms folded with an elegance that made its cloak shift like liquid. We require a fail-safe. A what? You are the only individual it seeks. If it becomes unstable, if it behaves unpredictably, your presence may be the only containment tool, he laughed, but it came out hoarse. You want me to be its emotional support human. That is an imprecise phrase, but functionally accurate. Jackson leaned back, wincing slightly. I've got cracked ribs, a hernia from the lift, and nerve pain that feels like a lobster claw in my spine. What makes you think I'm in any shape to babysit a sea god? It is not a request. It is a contingency. You are already bonded. The likelihood of re-establishing that connection with another human is statistically insignificant. You didn't answer the question. The alien paused. Because your physical limitations are irrelevant. The bond is not based on strength. It is based on recognition. He stared at the horizon. You guys really don't get people, do you? On the contrary. We understand your adaptability is often strongest when you are weakest. They left without fanfare. One moment there, the next, gone. No shimmer, no sound. Even the seagulls didn't react. By noon, Jackson was back in the water. Not diving, just wading into the shallows beyond the dock, wetsuit unzipped, brace still strapped tight beneath it. The cold bit into his legs and made him gasp, but the pain kept him alert. He carried nothing this time. No fish, no gear, just himself. The water around him stirred, not violently but with intent. It surfaced slowly, half-submerged, keeping its distance. Hey, Jackson said, you okay? It didn't move closer. Just hovered, gill lines fluttering beneath the surface. I'm not going anywhere, he added. But I'm not throwing you fish today. You're gonna have to settle for conversation. A low harmonic vibrated through the water, almost like an underwater cello. Jackson recognized the tone, not distress, but something like curiosity. I talked to your makers, he said. They're not coming back. You're free to stay or go. The creature sank slightly, then rose again, closer this time. Jackson took a step forward, water up to his waist. You chose to come back. That's what matters, not what you were built for. Not what they wrote in your code. The harmonic shifted, deeper now, resonating in his chest cavity. You're not a test anymore, he said. You're real, same as me. It circled once, then tilted its head in a motion eerily like a nod. Jackson let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That evening, the council craft made one final appearance, not to interfere, but to deliver something. A small container, sealed and buoyant, floated to shore. Inside was a data slate, readable in human language. It contained a full log of the creature's neural development, its behavioral shifts, and a final note. You were not the subject. You were the anomaly. Jackson read it twice, then tossed the slate onto the bench beside him. He glanced out at the surf. The creature hovered near the kelp line, watching the sunset. Sam walked up, holding 2 mugs of something vaguely resembling tea. You're not going to believe what just showed up on the Weather Boy feed, he said, handing one over. Let me guess. Unidentified bioform, stationary, not interfering with traffic. Sam nodded. And emitting low-frequency pulses, rhythmic, almost like music. Jackson took a sip and winced. Still tastes like boiled sock. They're your socks. They stood in silence a moment, the sky shifting from gold to violet. You know, Sam said, most people try to avoid getting emotionally entangled with experimental sea monsters. Yeah, Jackson said. But most people aren't very interesting. The creature let out a gentle pulse across the water, just enough to ripple the surface. Jackson raised his mug in its direction. To unplanned outcomes, Sam raised his as well, and badly managed expectations. They drank. The creature submerged again, not disappearing, just drifting deeper. It didn't need monitoring. It didn't need control. It just needed space. And someone who saw it not as a threat, not as a miracle, but as something that deserved to exist simply because it did. By nightfall, the buoy lights flickered on. The water calmed. And for the first time since the test began, since the creature was dropped into a world, it had no context, for everything felt still. Not silent, just still.